Please remain in your seats until the car comes to a full stop in the station and the safety bar on your seat is released. The Bible says that when I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And if only as an ideal statement of a recognition by a mature and responsible adult, most people would not find any great exception to this proposition, except maybe a radical ideologue. Children will be children, and adults need to become adults. Yet every summer, in any given theme park, anywhere around the world, indeed, because I have seen them, persons will actually wait for hours on a line of other people before them in sweltering heat to enjoy just a few brief minutes being jolted around in a car on a wooden or steel track, subjecting themselves to gravitational forces up to around 75 pounds or about 6G. Actually 2 times lower than the flip-flap railway roller coaster that used to be at Brooklyn's Coney Island around the turn of the 20th century, and racing at speeds up to 155 miles per hour, the fastest roller coaster in the world, confronting the 1 in 750 million chance that they might actually die, and still describe themselves as adventure seekers and adrenaline junkies, which may be fine if you have to yet graduate from high school, grammar school. But if you are an adult and you know the signs, and especially if you have never done anything even a bit more daring, a roller coaster ride in an amusement park, to be very honest, my friend, is rather mundane and passé. Yet we hear these crazy screams of all these cars, indicative that you probably are not quite the badass in the way that it went in your head. Yet and still, look on any of those lines in the theme park, and it's empirically evident that it is not just a bunch of kids who have not yet graduated from high school. And if you thought that there was no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole, just listen while you race around that track for every impassioned acknowledgement by someone that is standing in the need of prayer. Only further implicated if that roller coaster stops someplace where it is not easy to get off the ride. Or if that 1 in a million chance accident that actually requires an operator to tell you what you must do. Wait to hear people call upon the name of the Lord. Hello, my name is Major Mike Webb, and as the name might suggest, I have spent a little bit of time spanning 2 decades, which may be more than many, probably most, in the military, and with a father who was both a pastor as well as a National Guard chaplain, rank of colonel. In fact, I have also had at least a little experience with matters of religious faith, community of believers who had suffered great losses during a roller coaster ride of global public health crisis, taking directions like in many theme parks from operators who were just children inexperienced with pandemic crises and afraid to ask for help, and in which places of worship were closed to in-person services and fellowship as a result of sweeping government-imposed lockdowns and cancellations of what had been described as non-essential social gatherings during times acknowledged to be associated with fear, confusion, and despair, and at a time when even many adventure-filled theme parks were closed. Probably even told of summer jobs, afraid to die from a novel coronavirus. But at least I can say, even if scared to burn in hell myself, as an evangelical Christian, I got the once-in-a-lifetime chance to head down to sunny Florida, go roller coaster riding in a pandemic. How many chances are you going to get to do that? And all evidence suggests that I neither died nor managed to catch COVID-19, for that matter, not even in the pandemic infection hotbed of sunny Florida. And yes, I I still do the roller coaster thing every now and then, even though it is not exactly quite the same thrill that it was when I was just a child. And then I imagine that I am eating a York peppermint patty with the wind rushing through my hair. Anywho, please remain in your seats until the car comes to a full stop at the station and the safety bar on your seat is released. According to the newest member of the Congressional Atheist Club, the former Roman Catholic altar boy and not afraid to burn in hell, Don Byer, there is absolutely nothing in the Bible that he has ever read that supports the proposition that life begins at conception, when the sperm unites with the egg, and that further the science simply rejects this proposition. So, for the next few moments, we shall examine the claims proffered by the incumbent in the 56th most reliable Democratic Party district in the nation, most reliable Democratic Party district in the state of Virginia, where, according to local press, not even bookies would lay odds on anyone other than a Democrat holding the congressional seat, who in December had captured the early endorsement of Planned Parenthood, and an alumnus of the most selective private college in the entire nation, Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts, where only 13% of applicants are accepted, compared with 90% at BCU, and from where one of the wealthiest members of Congress graduated Phi Beta Kappa with a degree in economics. Supply and demand. Before, after 40 years in politics, finally decided to reject the Roman Catholic faith of his father and announce his personal pride that every single one of his 4 children had rejected religion, church, and God. And it's often said that man cannot serve God and mammon. First, let's begin this roller coaster ride with the science. Fasten your seatbelts, particularly within the context of recent public health crisis in which a virus, a mere single strand of RNA, has without one sentient thought been able to conquer the entire world. Probably made you spoil your dress, claiming more lives than Adolf Hitler, and apparently forcing even democratic governments to withdraw liberties voluntarily, like religion. Just to try, apparently in vain, to disrupt its advance. A simple virus, not even a cell, often described in grammar school, cells, and high school biology as the building blocks of life. Probably remember this at some point. Or maybe not. Might have been sleeping through that science class. According to Patrick Fortier, in a scientific article that had been published just a decade ago in the Origins of Life and Evolution of the Biosphere Journal, a science journal, not National Geographic Popular Science. Many attempts have been made, Fox News, many attempts have been made to find a definition of life that could be operational not only for terrestrial life, but for any form of life present in the universe. A definition that could help us to recognize a bona fide extraterrestrial life if we encounter it one day. And since 2/3 of Americans are wholly convinced, beyond all evidence, that there is not just life, but intelligent life on other planets in the universe, this very topic regarding what constitutes a living organism is of great importance. Far beyond whether a fetus in the womb of a mother, in an expectant mother, in the opinion of a doctor, is just a mere collection of cells that can be discarded in the trash. Basically, the decision in Roe v. Wade. Not the choice of the woman, but the decision of the doctor. Or a living being, unless your perspective is myopic and only concerned as to how most conveniently to resolve the problem of an unwanted pregnancy, and care to disregard the other far-reaching impacts of this question regarding where life begins. Just like Don Byer says that there are ripple effects to people believing that the earth is 6,000 years old, that we see in people rejecting the science of taking vaccines that at most have been proved to be efficacious but not effective, using the proper methodology to develop an effective virus. Please remain in your seats until the car comes to a full stop in the station and the safety bar on your seat is released. Some may recall from as early as middle school, or maybe not, a short list of common characteristics of all living organisms, or criteria for distinguishing that which is alive and that which is not. And one list in an evolving science makes mention of only a total of 5 common characteristics, which today is even taught to students at Whitney High School in Rockland, California, which is where we got this. The presence of 1. Cells, the building blocks of life. Homeostasis. 3. Reproduction. 4. Metabolism. And 5. DNA/hereditary. So comparing what we may here describe as a fetus compared to a novel coronavirus, which isn't stupid, probably took science. Does a fetus in abortion possess cells? Well, according to Carl Sagan, a very popular scientist who used to have a show on PBS. In his book, The Dragons of Eden, published in 1977, I'm sure that everyone has read it, by using simple calculations, at least simple calculations for him, he had determined that 1 cell's value of genetic information approximates 4,000 books of written information, book volumes that would measure up to 50 cubic inches each. And that is quite a lot of information. It's practically a library, which you probably never went to. Does a fetus have these extraordinarily complex structures that are given the nomenclature of cells by scientists? Yes, indeed it does. It should not. This should all be reviewed. While a virus, just a single strand of RNA, or even DNA, would be immediately disqualified from this list of criteria, would not be able to get in, rejected at the door, because these genomes are merely components of a larger organism. Kind of like a Lego cell block, but not, the recreation of whatever you made with your Lego cell blocks. Cells, which this list of characteristics sets as these thresholds for qualification as life. Must life on other planets also have cells? Think of the impact of your decision upon space exploration for other intelligent life in the cosmos and your plans to join the Federation of Planets. Second, we consider homeostasis, a technical term for which many may have forgotten the definition since high school, in an elective class that probably most would have preferred to have avoided if they could have, but run out any given day to watch this science fiction movie. And homeostasis simply means the ability of the specimen to maintain for itself independently a relatively stable internal environment, or which a scientist might use such indicia as body temperature, oxygen blood levels, sugar levels, pH and water levels, which again would be present in a fetus, but not a virus. Even after uniting with a living host to simply hijack that mechanism like a parasite for the simple function of replicating itself. And some people like to run around and just do that. Maybe they're not human. I just want to replicate myself, or do things that make me replicate myself, but I don't want to be replicated. So I'll abort. And reproduction is the third criterion on the list that is taught to high school students in biology class in Rockland, California. We start to get these wonderful ideas of trying to replicate ourselves. Fourth, we consider metabolism, or the ability of an organism to use energy for growth and movement, which again is a characteristic common to any fetus after a sperm unites with an egg, but not a virus, eliminating any potential form of life that resembles a virus in the universe from the list of living organisms. And so, reviewing the list taught to high school students in this biology class in California, which you should know if you are graduated from high school, have your little diploma. While a fetus would satisfy the definition of life, a virus simply would fail the test on most criteria. Let's then examine another list of characteristics that scientists have used to decide this question. 1. Order. 2. Sensitivity or response to the environment. 3. Reproduction. 4. Growth and development. 5. Regulation. 6. Homeostasis. And 7. Energy processing. This is the list from the Library and Information Science Network, a list compiled online by a self-described technology expert in, Bangladesh, which we may just simply impeach as not authoritative, as a credible reference on the basis that he is simply not exactly an expert, and this would not be accepted as expert testimony in a federal courtroom. Get laughed out of court, even though this list does include some generally accepted criteria for determining whether or not a specimen is considered to be a living organism. Certainly, after a pandemic in which businesses, schools, libraries, and even churches were closed by government mandates, where people were ordered to accept donning facial coverings determined to be not effective by the NIOSH over a decade ago, maintain social distance, shelter in place, and basically place normal life on hold for now over 2 years. The question as to whether a virus is considered life, for which over 80% of Americans over the age of 5 have been administered at least one shot to avoid infection, like a birth control against the virus, which may or may not be life itself, is an important question to resolve, even without considering what to look for in the cosmos. Boldly going where no man has gone before, and right here on Earth, according to Patrick Fortier, it has been realized quite recently that Bible particles are by far the most abundant biological entities on our planet. Indeed, they are 10 times more abundant than bacterial cells in the upper ocean. More viruses than bacteria in the ocean. And exactly how many of those viruses then, next reasonable question, pose a threat to mankind from the most abundant biological particles in the world? Well, that was a question posed by a scientist being proactive named Mark Woolhouse in 2012, in the year in which the MERS virus suddenly emerged on the Arabian Peninsula, a coronavirus that had, curiously, found only nosocomial settings or hospital related outbreaks, and it was tied to dromedary camels. Apparently they had dromedary camels running around through the hospital wards in Saudi Arabia. And perhaps he had a little evolutionary pressure to try to anticipate pretty accurately how many more of these surprise attacks might be in our future. Don't want to have any more dromedary camels running through hospital wards and setting off disease. And believe it or not, by 2012, Mark Woolhouse, a scientist, had determined that there were only a total of 119 viruses harmful to mankind, which is, if you think about it, infinitesimally small, and would have indicated that another surprise attack from the viruses would not have been expected or anticipated by all probability in less than a decade after the emergence of the MERS virus. SARS before that, but that another coronavirus. Seriously, but that clearly did not go quite the way that a scientist would have reasonably predicted in their heads in nature, and would raise very serious concerns for an actual scientist. But Don Beyer has never even raised these questions, and not afraid to burn in hell, he still describes himself as a person dedicated to science. Nonetheless, according to the National Academy of Science, actual science organization, in an Everything You Need to Know About Infectious Disease book, which I'm sure everyone read, that they published about a decade ago, did you know that there is a close connection between microbes and humans? And experts believe about half of all human DNA originated from viruses that infected and embedded their nucleic acid in our ancestors' egg and sperm cells. Imagine that. Which is that point at which we are focused on deciding whether or not a fetus might be described by a scientist as a living organism. Location. Real estate. Viruses were first discovered just before the beginning of the 20th century, mid to late 1890s. And the very first virus that caused disease in humans, the smallpox virus, had not been discovered. It was causing trouble long before, but it wasn't discovered, seen until 1905. But because they are so very small, we didn't discover the electron microscope until 1932. Much of what is even known about viruses has only been discovered by scientists in the last few decades. And even that remains the subject of great and varying debate. Talk about evolving science. While a fetus is very much larger than a virus, with an expectancy of life that will even prompt a person to seek to terminate its further development, if not pass laws in Congress, go to court on cases. Just as the entire world was disrupted to mitigate or prevent the spread of a virus, which is not quite as large as a fetus, which can easily be examined under a microscope, like any other cells, have been viewable since the experiments of Robert Hooke, as you should recall from grammar school science, a member of the Royal Society of London. Just like Sir Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin are big heroes, the discoverer of cells and the laws of elasticity in the 18th century, even before the time that we were drafting our Constitution. And if it has yet to be determined by scientists whether or not a virus, which fails most of the currently accepted definitions for being a living organism, is still unsettled law, debated by scientists wanting to engage in the elevated discourse about philosophy. Clearly, simply decreeing that a fetus is not life just because you may want the convenience of a legal abortion right now and get on with your life is not exactly following the science now, is it? So please, remain in your seat until the car comes to a full and complete stop at the station and the safety bar on your seat is released. Don Bayer, who has even told reporters at the Hill that he has a bookshelf in his Washington congressional office that is contained only with books he has never read. Why would you do that? It is very clear that he has never read the science about what scientists have determined to be the accepted characteristics for distinguishing that which is a living organism. And it is unlikely that he has even read the 1973 Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade, which he is nonetheless just as ready to declare as being settled law. How do you declare something if you don't read it? Especially after his early endorsement by his supporters at Planned Parenthood, very strong lobby and special interest. So do you really believe that an atheist who is not afraid to burn in hell has ever actually even read the Bible to determine whether or not it addresses the topic of abortion, which would have been readily available to a virgin named Mary, where in an incredible story she had become suddenly in the family way, so to speak, with an unplanned pregnancy of her very own in a small town. Kind of sort of embarrassment. A story that certainly a former Roman Catholic altar boy should have heard at some point attending Mass. And so, Father, could you help out an old altar boy? Please remain in your seats until the car comes to a full and complete stop at the station and the safety bar on your seat is released. This briefing is unclassified, as you were. My name is Victor Mike Webb, and by God, I am going to do your job. This year is I'll do the right thing, and we shall make America great. Carry on. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.